firstly, what is fear? So fear is actually something that's triggered in the body, in the nervous system, as a response to feeling like we're in danger. So this could be triggered by anything. It could be triggered by our own thought, and often is. It could be triggered by something that's actual perceived danger, whether it actually is or not. And it puts this body in a position where the chemicals of the body get ready to take action and either run away or to fight. So it's like a biochemical reaction in the body, and we can feel that like rush of adrenaline that gets us in a position to be able to take action. So it's more complicated than other emotions like feeling sadness or something along those lines, because this fear is like a full body and nervous system activation that is happening. So that's harder to work with. We can work with it through awakening when it's getting activated, but it's just that added challenge there that it's really physiological. The body is reacting to the fear. So it's helpful to know that it's not just thinking that is the problem here when we're talking about fear. A lot of it can be just thought processes are causing fear, but sometimes, in life, when the way we've been wired in our DNA is to react when we're in danger, to keep safe, and that's what's kept the species alive. So it's a wonderful thing. The difficulty is that when we're going through an awakening and we're coming up to some things that are very scary, like accessing our emptiness, something along those lines, then that activates this same fear. So this fear feels the same regardless of whether we're being attacked by a bear, or whether someone's yelling at us, or whether we're accessing our essential nature. It's all scary, and we're going to get that fear response in the body. And so that's okay. There are things that we can do to manage this and to work through it. I could say, well, just, face the fear, just move through it, just go towards it, and you'll keep progressing. And that would be partially true, but it's more complicated than that. One of the reasons why it's more complicated is because of trauma. And if you don't like that word, just think of the patterns or the things that aren't processed that are left in the body and the nervous system from this life. So we could have had all kinds of things happen to us, and perhaps they weren't even bad or scary, but we interpreted it that way. We could have been in a big storm, a natural disaster, a car accident, some type of emergency situation, a medical situation. It could be abuse. It could have been absolutely anything that's happened to us. And during those periods, we felt scared. The body went into that fear response. And if we were not able to process that fully at the time, which we often couldn't, we often had parents that didn't know how to themselves, so they couldn't teach us, then that's got stuck in the nervous system. Now, we could call that traumas, but basically that's the stuff that makes accessing fear during awakening even harder, because what happens is awakening is quite triggering for a lot of things, but particularly fear. So whatever fear we have in the system, when something scary happens again, it triggers all that fear comes up, all that old fear comes up as well. And so it magnifies the fear. And so what we can do to lessen that is to work on the specific fears that haven't been processed yet. So those specific traumas or those specific imprints that are there from before. It could have been as an adult, could have been something scary that you went through. But if you work on those specifically and let those go, as best you can. And you might need support from a therapist or someone, but you might be able to do it yourself. Each person's going to be different as to what you can do, but you could try inner child work, talking to those child parts that still feel stuck in that time and fearful, and loving them and being very patient with them. And when we do this, what it does is it makes there less fear in the system overall. Then when something scary happens, whether it's to do with awakening or anything else, there's going to be less fear being activated because there's just less fear in the system. So this is my best tip for working with fear during awakening, and that is because it's just making it so much harder than it has to be. So yes, there is fear that happens just because of seeing reality. Not everyone's going to interpret it in a fearful way. It wasn't so much the case for me. I didn't have a lot of fear there. I more found it a sad process because we are wired differently and we will experience it slightly differently. But for a lot of people, it is quite a scary and understandably quite a scary thing to be coming up against, to be realizing that you truly do not exist as this separate person that you thought you were. That it is scary. So and totally understandable why that would be. But the challenge is, if we have all that other old fear in the system, trying to face that existential fear is going to be way harder, and in some cases impossible if you've got a lot of fear-based trauma in the system. So I would suggest do whatever you can to work on those specific fears that have happened in your life and heal them as much as you can when you're going through the awakening journey. And then the overall working with the existential fear is going to be so much easier.